And welcome back. And we are moving into our second conversation for today. I'd say an equally important conversation as we talk about the celebration of Women's Month in Belize. We have with us on set Eleanor Murillo, representing the National Women's Department. National Women's Commission, that is. I'm sorry. We have Taheera Usher in the middle, representing the Women's Department. And on the end, we have Joan Burke of the Belize Family Life Association. Good morning and welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
To start off the conversation, I think it would be very, we need to be able to kind of delve into what is happening in this country. And one of the arguments so often that we hear around this time of year is, oh, we're talking about women, and then there are all these major issues that come to light. It happens every year. In October, when we talk about gender-based violence, we usually see the same. Can I just get an initial reaction from the panel here, talking about the very serious issues affecting our girls and women, and how it empowers you during this particular month?
Yes, well, this morning when Taheera and I was out there, we were talking about the same thing. While Women's Month is a time of celebration, a time of empowerment and so on, you know, it really saddens us to hear of all the incidences, you know, affecting women, girls, boys and men. I mean, it affects everybody when it comes to violence and so on. And so while we want to celebrate our women, while we want to empower our women and look at all the wonderful things that we have been doing throughout the year, you know, we also have to reflect on where do we need to go, because we know that we still have so much work to do. Yeah. You know, we get reports, okay, we have trained 100 people in a certain village, and then bam, you hear, but somebody died in that village. You know, and so we know that the work continues. It's very difficult for us. It's bittersweet because we want to celebrate, but then again, there is so much to do. And I think that's why our team is so important this year. Hashtag #PressforProgress, and so that the work continues and there's so much to do.
Yeah. Any other reaction?
Yes, I agree. Women's Month is supposed to be about celebrating our achievements, but we also have to be mindful of everything that's going on in our country, not only this month, but all the other months. And so it's important for us to remember that we have to refocus, we have to regroup, and we have to discuss these issues that are affecting women and children and men as well. Because when we think of Women's Month, we always think, oh, only women, but we have to include our men in this discussion and the issues that also affect them. And so I think that for this month, it's important that we not forget what has been going on in our country, and we bring these issues to the table and we discuss them openly.
Yeah.
I look at the issues from a developmental perspective, right? When we go back and we review what happened maybe, almost 90 years ago, why the celebration of women, why focus on women? There were some of the same issues then that we still have now, right? And I feel that if we do not come to the discussion table and we look at women and girls within the setting of a family, and we don't engage in a discussion around the family. And when we speak about policies, what are some of the policies that must be put in place? Because the perpetrators, they come from a structure.
Which include women.
Exactly. They come from a structure. And so if you don't have, on one hand, what is necessary to empower that structure that will produce individuals that can become productive citizens, and we won't hear about these issues, right? And then we also have policies and systems in place to respond effectively to when there's any kind of breach or any kind of violation, right? So I look at it more from that and how it impacts us as a society. Because whenever you have an individual who is accused of a crime, you have two families that are affected.
Yeah.
The family of the victim
And the
and the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Right?
Now it's, you know, I think it's a hard time sometimes to look at achievements that may have been made, and there have been achievements. But we hear, let's use the example of a loss of life within a relationship that's that there has been ongoing domestic violence. We hear of the nightmare of the last couple days of Alyssa Nunez. And it really is, and we've heard more incidents of rape, we've heard more incidents of violence against women in some form. And we just say to ourselves, obviously, we have not made enough moves to really put our girls and women in a position where they are doing better. That's how I see it. And I realize it's because you're kind of inundated with the negative. How do you tell people that the work continues, that progress has been made, but also that we are not at the point where we can sit back and be relaxed? How do you keep sending that message out?
And I think that what happens with the news is that we hear the worst case scenarios, but every day women go through these issues and girls are affected by these issues. And so when these things come up in news and we see these worst case scenarios, it should also remind us that every day someone goes through this, and we have to continue the work and we have to continue the advocacy and support. So it's not just in March that we want to come out and we want to say, oh, it's time to celebrate women and we need to present these issues. We have to talk about these things throughout the entire year and keep these conversations going so that these things don't get to the point where they have to make it to the news, that these things are addressed before these things happen.
Do you find that in terms of women being able to speak out on social issues, be it crime and violence, be it sexual abuse, any range of matters that affect us as people, that perhaps in our society, women only speak out when something is adversely affecting them, as opposed to clamoring for change despite the fact that they may not be directly affected by certain things. I say that because, as Marlene alluded to earlier, in the month of November, I believe it is, you know, we discuss heavily on gender-based violence and what have you. And then things go quiet until something happens and then there's a flare-up and it's brought back into the spotlight. Women's Month, we're focusing solely on women and issues that affect women and their place in our society, etc., etc. But then things seem to peter off eventually, and then we're back to not really saying anything. But there's a lot happening where we would need and we would want women to weigh in on. Do you believe that that is the case?
Well, I can go first. And Isani, you are so right, okay, in that the March and November, we tend to be most vocal. But when we look, as Taheerah said, every day, we have women being faced with these situations. However, when we look at the departments and the units who are charged with the responsibility to respond to this or to respond to these situations, they are grossly understaffed. They have limited resources to respond. And so on a daily basis, you have some of these offices that are staffed with one person. So on a daily basis, they're basically trying to do damage control and trying to respond to the many situations, because they're not only responding to issues of women, but you have children. Sometimes they have to go through a system with child protection. They have to go to court. They have to go to all these things. And these things don't make the news, because for some people, that's every day.
Yeah.
Right? So whilst we may want to be out there every day demonstrating, making our voices heard, it will be at the expense of the woman who then just beat up last night, who needs to be removed from from her
Protected.
home, who
Yeah.
need some level of protection. But at least I think though that there could more can be done, because the same, I believe, and this is only my view, in the same manner we come together collectively during March and during November, I think we can find the space that we can come together and be a little bit more vocal and work in some united front. The issues, I believe we really need to do further and deeper analysis and say, okay, really what are some of the causes? We talk about, yes, we've done so much. We have come together this year and decided we have to do a report card.
Yes.
It's a must.
Yes.
Because we have to see what have been some of our accomplishments, what we did well, what we didn't do, and what needs to be done that we can improve the lives of women, children, and at the end of the day, families in this country.
What's working and what's not working.
Right.
And, you know, I think that's such a key issue. And, you know, I hear what Isani says, and it's really something that's echoed by the wider community quite often. But I also know that there is continuous work taking place year round. And one thing that we didn't really talk about in our earlier conversation is where resources go. And typically, when it comes to the social issues, these things that don't change overnight or 1 year even, that's where you have the lesser resources going. So, but my question is this. You know, I feel that oftentimes we do talk about the end result, the rape case that comes to light, that goes to the court. I mean, it's horrible, but within it is a minor success that it went to court. You know, the murder victim who was a victim of domestic violence as well. But there's so many underlying cultural factors that happen every single day that we struggle with as women. Security. Why do I have to walk with a pepper spray everywhere I go? Why am I choosing to turn a blind eye to street harassment? To me or to another young girl walking down the lane? Why do I not speak out against biases against women, societal norms, expectations, women in leadership, all of these things? And I feel like that's where we don't always build a connection, that encouraging a woman being put down in any way, shape, or form, being held at a not equal standard, is really the beginning of the perpetuation of violence in another form. Why is it that we struggle in having everyday women and men understand that this is a part of the problem as well?
I think it even goes back to even having women recognize that they're being sexually harassed. And so you have to have that empowerment to let them know or give them the knowledge or educate them on these issues, because some women don't even know that they're being harassed, or they do not recognize that they're being treated this way, or they don't recognize these things. So we have to start off at the basic level and just providing this information and this education to even start off with before we can even address the actual situation and what is going on.
Yeah.
The National Gender-Based Violence Plan of Action speaks about a Belize free of violence. So if we want to see a Belize free of violence, we also have to bring men to the table. In the plan of action talks about training for men and boys, and so this year the Women's Commission is looking at bringing men to the table. You know, we have training all over the place, and most of the time it's women and girls who are there. This year we want to focus on men and boys. They have to be a part of the conversation as well, when it comes to violence, when it comes to taking up responsibility in the home, and so on and so forth. So I'm really excited about that because the men have been saying, what about us? You have women this, but what about the men? And so the plan of action calls for us to target men in terms of bringing them on board, training, having conversations. And so I think we have to start bringing our men as well to the table and to hear from them and let them we provide information, and at the same time they provide information for us. How can we move forward in ensuring we reach a Belize free of gender-based violence?
I've sat in many meetings where we've been asked, why don't we celebrate Men's Day? It's always just Women's Day. And these are important questions to ask. And why is it that we don't celebrate International Men's Day when there is a day designated for men? And so these are questions that are important to
Well,
us.
I always ask back the men because I say, why is it
Exactly.
the men always asking the women?
Women,
to do
when
it.
we take
Why don't we
initiative to
organize
celebrate
it?
ourselves.
Yes, yes.
And there are good men who are good examples in this
Of
country
course, yes.
who can take up the lead.
The lead and
And we cannot, I understand equality, but we cannot ignore that women have graver issues
Issues,
when
of
it comes
course.
to gender-based violence, and that we need to bring them up to
To the
par.
par.
And if the men want to be able to keep themselves going, they're welcome to as well.
And-
But that's my perspective, right?
I think it's also bigger than just, this is just my humble opinion as the sole male on the panel here, but I think while yes, enough emphasis and should be placed on issues of concern, gender-based violence and what have you. I think there are also other equally as positive, equally as influential areas where we can also focus. Ms. Burke, you said family. I think when you look at an investment in family, you're looking at the role of the man, woman, and child or children if that were the case. And I think when you're able to strengthen that particular movement, it transcends gender-based violence. It transcends, it's Mother's Day, Father's Day, Children's Day. It's a complete movement
Holistic.
towards building the society from the ground up. And I think we often kind of lose track by singling out one or the other. Right?
I think what is important is that we need to work with our boys before they become men. Right? And you find in homes, and I applaud all the parents and whoever form that role, who carry out that role as parent, because it could be the guardian, could be the caregiver, where they have very strong position about little boys hitting little girls, because that's where it starts.
Yes.
Or the mere fact of hitting, whether the girl hit the boy or the boy hit the girl, and the matter of respect.
Yeah.
And we don't have to wait until we become adult to respect individuals and to respect that, listen, I must respect you as a being, your body. And no, it's how we speak to each other, even as little ones from within our home, because that's where it starts.
And I think I'm glad you went there, because I think one of the things too that we don't always speak about, and maybe you do some of this work, is talking with mothers. Mothers raise boys into men, and they teach them the values. We use the example, we use the example of schools all the time. Women sweep men, girls sweep, men lift. I hope that's changed by now. Or building in gender stereotypes from such a young age. Limiting what girls can do and adding extra pressures to what boys have to take care of. But these are things that mothers and teachers and female adults and male adults in society create within our children.
Yeah, and I think it goes even beyond the mothers, not beyond the mothers, but we have to start off at the smaller level because, for example, we go in schools and in children's home and we do gender sessions with the students, and they maybe 13, 14, they're saying that, Miss, my brother not supposed to sweep. My brother not supposed to do the washing up. And so it's the culture and the idea of this gender and gender roles already starts off from you're younger. So when you become a mother and you're an adult, it's already embedded in your mind. And so that process has to start off from we get them at a young age.
I think one of the interesting things that Marlene just raised is that indeed, when you look at the composition of the household at present, you find that fathers are absent. Fathers are more and more absent. And the truth of the matter is, at least from my point of view, humbly, is that a woman can raise a boy child only to a certain age. Then the father needs to come in, because the father or a father figure needs to come in, because that's where a certain association is necessary for that child, that boy, to transition into adulthood. And there's only so much a woman can teach you in that regard. It's almost the same argument that can be said, okay, a woman is how would you say? the proper parent to raise her daughter. Because when it comes to certain physiological issues and that sort of a thing, a woman is the perfect person to be able to speak to her daughter on those changes. Similarly to the way a man's role is. If I have a son and I realize that at a certain age, the son starts having behavioral issues, perhaps because I'm not around as much as I ought to be as a father, I can't attribute that or the solution of that problem to the woman who he's with every day as the matriarch. That role is reserved for me as the man to come in and say, son, you will respect your mother as much as you respect your sister and any other woman out there. Son, these are some of the things that you need to avoid growing up so that you don't fall into the wrong company, etc., etc. The man has to step in and take up that mantle. And I'm seeing that we don't have as much of that today. Men just remain distant, and then the woman has to be the mother and the father. And then we wonder why certain things happen the way they are in our society.
But the argument is even women, even in relationships where both parents are present, women are a primary caretaker oftentimes. So.
And I want to say something, Isami. The parents, the mother and the father, they both have equal responsibility in raising the children, right? Yes, there will come a time when the father or the father figure will be more engaged in the life of the boy, because I always say, I can't say to my son what an orgasm feels like for a male, or what to expect when wet dreams or anything like that. I can't say that to, I can't explain that, right? Yeah. I can explain that to my girl child. However, the father, when that young girl becomes at a certain age, the father then needs to be that role model. I admire any father who will say, you know what, no? My daughter's first date, not me. You know? Because when I take my daughter out, and I want to take my daughter out, I will teach her how she must be treated by that male who she might want to fall in love with. What to expect, what to tolerate, and what not to tolerate.
Can I also say, and it's not just telling her, it's what
she sees
between her mother and father.
Yeah.
You know, I really think one of the fundamental points is to be able to recognize that the entire concept of family is important. A little girl needs both her parents or both figures as a part of I understand the struggle of single parents, but it doesn't mean you can't find a good priest, a good father, a good uncle, a good maybe a brother-in-law, to be able to help to shape them into what they need. But you need the influence of a mother-like figure and a father-like figure for your best development. But I don't want to move too much away from focusing on what our girls and women are facing. And I think the violence that we see, and I know that the move is Press for Progress. And let me be devil's advocate here. Because I know a lot of people watch and they're just so skeptical because of what we hear. Is advocacy enough? Is investment in advocacy and say, women, stand up for yourself, is that enough? Is that making an impact in the lives of women and girls in this country?
I'll have my colleagues and then I'll give my position on that.
I wouldn't say that it is enough, but it is needed. We have to have it. We have to have advocacy and activism around these issues, because maybe 200 years ago, these issues weren't even presented or weren't even being brought to the table to even discuss it. And it was because of those advocacy and because of those activisms and because of those movements that these issues even became important for us to discuss. So because we got to that point and now we have other issues that come up, we have to continue this advocacy so that we can again bring these issues and keep them on the table so that we can find solutions for them. But it's not, we can not only just advocate, we also have to put our action where we're doing or talking, and so it goes together hand in hand. But we cannot forget the advocacy and just go out there and work. We have to talk about these issues.
Yeah. I think it has evolved over the years. When we looked at the women's movement across the world and even in Belize, The focus have changed, have shifted as time goes on. Back in the 80s, women were clamoring for productivity, for being seen in the work in terms of entrepreneurship. So the ladies, when they were celebrating Women's Week in the 1980s, it was to say, we can produce too, we are farmers as well. And so that was what they were clamoring for back in the 80s, and they achieved that by working together. And so as time goes, now we're in the new millennium, already so far into it, and we see the issues being even more. I mean, it's like back to the family, back to the basics in terms of our value system, our morals, in terms of how important family and community is to us. And so whenever we find, okay, this is our root cause, then that's where the work begins all over again. So it's evolving.
Yeah, advocacy is super, super important. But for me, and from where I sit, we advocate, we empower. Okay? But then we live in a system that is still very much patriarchal.
Yes.
Okay? We say to women, okay, one of the contributing factors for gender-based violence that we see is dependency. Right? Here you are at home and you hear many women, oh, I'm a single woman with 5, 6 children, blah, blah, blah. And we set up systems where women can go back to school, where our women and girls, they can get enrolled in non-traditional skills and all that. They graduate, some of them graduate even with in terms of academic performance, much higher than some of the males and the male counterparts and everything. But when they go back into the real world, you find they're being sexually harassed in the workplace, right? You find that they have to work maybe double, 3 times that of their male counterpart to be recognized and to be compensated for the work that they produce. I'll make it as simple. We empower our women. We say, you know what? These are the signs for domestic violence. Recognize these signs. A woman finds herself in a situation, calls the police department for help, for response. So here, oh, we don't have no vehicle, we don't have this, we don't have that. So here you have an empowered woman. Yeah. You have a woman who we have advocated for, but being failed by the system. We have women who, when they go before, I haven't been to the court for a long time to hear how they treat a rape case. But I have sit in and heard women being asked questions like, so when we rape you, you may have one orgasm, you may this, because if you did that mean you may like it, or that kind of thing. Now, how can you, or how can any woman out there feels that, you know, advocacy is enough? Yeah. Right? Because I have done everything that you have said to me to do, but when I get out there into the real world, that's not my reality. Yeah.
And it gets frustrating.
Well, forgive me for being the cynic here, because I hear that. I see on social media women tearing apart other women.
Of course.
And then putting on an orange t-shirt and saying, yay, women's empowerment. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way.
That's a very interesting
Exactly. No,
I also
honestly.
see women who will say, the poor 4-year-old who went through this horrible abuse, and then a 16-year-old, she may ask
for it. Right.
It doesn't work that way.
It's hypocritical.
Exactly.
And then we hear women say, when a woman has been murdered or finally has left her home and has to go back because she has no income.
No income.
She desperate.
And
and that's why I'm saying I'm being a bit of a cynic. Are we simply saying we want progress, but we refuse to do the actions? I made a call a couple weeks ago, and I said it to men and women. When the guys are hanging out and your buddy say, yeah, my woman can't do that, she not allowed to do this, do you stop them? Because then you can't be outraged by a murder of a woman because of domestic violence, and you don't stop him when he says that. And women who don't call the police, and women who will criticize what someone is going through in that domestic violence cycle, we're not helping either. I feel like we have become too comfortable with Facebook posts and likes and shares rather than taking action. Haven House always needs funds. They need money so domestic violence victims can run out of their house to save their lives with their children with nothing, and they provide. And there's Marla's House of Hope. There are several, I think there are 2 more, really. I can't say several more. There are 4 in total in the country.
Grossly under.
So I'm just saying, are we investing too much in advocating for a change that isn't realistic for women? You tell me leave, but go where? You tell me stop relying on the man and make money how? Feed my kids how? So how do you match all this empowerment talk with action?
Yeah. And I guess that goes back to what Ms. Eleanor mentioned with the gender policy, and it speaks of a multi-sectorial response to these type of issues, because the ministry cannot do it alone. Women's department, which is now Women and Family Support Department, because we have extended beyond just focusing on women and looking at the entire family, we cannot deal with these situations alone, and so we need our partners, we need our private, our NGOs, our CSOs, everybody to come together and to work towards addressing these issues, because one of the most challenge of the woman coming out of a household is that she doesn't have somewhere to go with her children, and so she has to think twice before she comes out.
Yeah, I want to say here, and I want to introduce a global initiative, because some of these issues definitely are not unique to Belize, right? And we've done, decades of advocacy, decades. The advocacy investment, I don't even know if we can put a figure to it now. But there is a recognition that much more needs to be done.
Yeah.
So there's this initiative called She Decides, right, which came out of the UK, and you have a number of persons throughout the world who are now supporting, but the brainchild behind it saying, we don't only want your support, we want to see changes, we want to see policy changes. And it basically speaks to a world where every girl and a woman can decide what to do with her body, with her life, and with her future. And he said, when she decides, the world is better, stronger, safer. She decides whether, when, and with whom to have sex, to fall in love, to marry, to have children. She has the right to information, to health care, and to choose. She is free to feel pleasure, to use contraception, of course that is where we are concerned, to access abortion safely, and to sit and to decide. She is free from pressure, from harm, free from judgment and fear. Because when others decide for her, she faces violence, forced marriage, and oppression. She faces risk to her health, to her dignity, to her dreams, and to her life. When she does not decide, she cannot create the life she deserves, the family she wants, a prosperous future to call her very own. When we and you and he and they are uniting, standing together with her, she can make the decisions only she should make. Political leadership and social momentum are coming together like never before. But we can go further. We can do more. From today, we fight against the fear. We right the wrongs. We mobilize political and financial support. We work to make laws and policies just. We stand up for what is right. Together, we create the world that is better, stronger, safer, but only if and when she decides. Now, this is She Decides manifesto.
Yeah.
And they're asking if we are serious about improving the lives of women, girls, and of course families, then we commit to this.
Yes, and we must do more. And I think that is one of the things that obviously is important in our society. We're cash-strapped. You are right, the ministries can't absorb everything. NGOs are out there hustling for whatever funds they can make. And also, I think even if you don't have the resources, you have time. And you can mentor little girls, little boys, be that father figure, mother figure, sister figure, or just a positive figure in their lives. But it has to be more than just words at this point. I think we're seeing that our children are hurting, and in a way they should never be hurt. I worry sometimes that we just keep on saying and not doing.
Yeah. And when we see leaders like, for example, Donald Trump
Yeah, the US
making
president.
certain
Yeah.
decisions. As a matter of fact, She Decides comes in response to what we call the global gag rule.
Yeah.
That whenever there's a in power in the US, they cut millions of dollars from programs that support
Like Planned Parenthood.
women and the development of women.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's Women's Month. I'm pretty certain that there's a calendar of events for the days ahead. What can we expect?
Well, just as every other year, we have activities happening in the entire country. PG, Stan Creek, Corozal, Orange Walk, and so we have all these activities with different agencies or women from the ministry in each district, hosting events and activities. Our main two activities would be our 20,000 Strong, which is this Friday. The special envoy is leading on that. And then we have our National Women's Award ceremony that takes place every year in March, the 13th ceremony, and we'll be honoring women from across the country for their contribution and their commitment to their communities, their households, and their society. And so those are the main activities, but we have for example, BFLA doing their activities, RET International doing their activities, and so it's a variety of activities. I think we have a lot. And so this information would be made available from our Women's Month booklets, which we hope to have by this week printed, and we can start to distribute them countrywide so people can know this information. But we would also be posting activities on our ministry's website as they're occurring, and so this information would be made available. And I believe that each agency would be doing their own advertisement for their activities. Most of the activities are open for the entire country, women, men,
and are free
to attend and are free.
BFLA is having quite a number of clinics.
Yes,
Okay,
right.
tell us.
Every March we do our what we call our promotional package, because women's health is very, very important to us, and particularly when we look at the issue of cervical cancer and how it continues to impact the families, because when we know that cancer treatment is no little penny, it can really, really reduce a family's resources like overnight. So we offer a package of services which include the pap smear or the VIA, which is the visual inspection using acetic acid, which is still another form of screening, as well as manual breast exam, the height, weight, and any other services that might be relevant once the woman comes in. One of the things too, this Friday, BFLA, last year we introduced a concept called BFLA After Dark, which is bad because anybody who BFLA knows that we recognize sex not only for procreation, but sex for somebody to be responsible about the decision making, but also for something that you enjoy, to have pleasure. And so we create an environment with persons can feel free to express their sexuality and have no inhibitions or no apologies for having pleasure. Right? So this Friday we're having on our bad anniversary. It's happy hour, but at the same time we provide information. We engage a discourse in how to be responsible in making sexual decisions.
Excellent.
We want to, and this is I want to invite all the males, partners, fathers, take one day out of this month and celebrate your partner, celebrate your woman, celebrate your girl child, right? If you've never made them feel special, you take that time, you know, one day, however you feel like you want to celebrate that individual. If you've never brought like only 125 sneakers, you know, do something.
Thank you for your
special.
contribution.
Right, that you know, because the thing is, we, and as a society, we have failed to teach our men and our boys how to express feelings. Right? We want them. Our little boys, when they fall and then get one scrape, we beat them and then they cry. We tell them, right. But we want men to understand, and our boys, it's okay. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to express how you feel. So that is what I want.
So they're also included in the
Of course,
in the
and
event
this is
itself,
my invitation to all the men, all the boys in Belize. You show that appreciation.
There are quite a number of interesting activities lined up. We see and I think women should take advantage
and it's
of
only
this
$60
screening.
for that entire package of service.
And there are legal
$60.
rights workshops, which is important for women
Sexual
as well.
and reproductive health workshops in the districts.
And self-defense as well, and quite a number of educational forums. So please do get the calendar, check out the activities, and see if you can perhaps fit in the time to benefit from one of these sessions.
I just want to say here, even though it's not like on the calendar, BFLA along with Humana, right? We will be launching a project, an EU project, tomorrow, right? And it basically looks at the whole issue of human rights, and sexual and reproductive rights. But it's taking a different, it's not the traditional project, because we hope to work with leaders and other leaders within some of the communities in southern Stan Creek.
Nice.
Because when we look at issues of GBV, when we look at issues of teen pregnancy, forced marriages, and all that, STIs, all that, we have to get the non-traditional to the table. So I want to acknowledge Humana for that initiative and for engaging BFLA in this initiative.
Well, ladies, best of luck with all the events, and we really hope that people find those calendars so that they can take advantage of the services. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take that. Come back, we'll have our wrap up, so stay tuned.